Welcome to Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local. I'm Jamie Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. That's Heath Cummings. We have the starts and sits you need for week number 9 to help you dominate your fantasy leagues. Let's get right to it with the start of the week, and that's Myles Gaskin. Let's face it, he's been a bust so far through the 2021 campaign, but he's going to deliver for you in week number 9, taking on a Houston Texans team that's been miserable against opposing running backs. They've given up a touchdown to a running back in 6 of the last 8 games that they played, 6 of 8 games on the season. And Gaskin has been good so far this season when he's had work. And we know with Malcolm Brown now he's going to get work. So 4 games this year with at least 15 total touches, 2 of those 17 or more PPR points. I think he's going to have an opportunity for a lot of work taking on this Texans defense. Big week coming for Myles Gaskin, which is why he's the start of the week. Other start options for me include a couple of running backs, Josh Jacobs and Darrell Williams. Gaskin's teammate there in Devontae Parker. Jarvis Landry, big time benefit if Odell Beckham doesn't play as expected, and Dallas Goedert having a great matchup against the Chargers. Heath, let's take a look at your starts here. You also like a member of the Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa. I want to ask you, though, about Mike Davis because he hasn't been great this year, coming off a better performance than what we saw 2 games ago when he actually took on the Dolphins. Tough matchup, though, against the Saints, but you're still starting.
Definitely a rocky stretch there for Mike Davis with Cordero Patterson taking over more touches. But what we've seen in the 2 games without Calvin Ridley is that Mike Davis has 11 targets. I think he'll be more involved in the passing game. They will be playing from behind. He will catch a lot of passes in this game.
Dave, you also like Devontae Parker as one of your starts in your list here. But I want to ask you about Boston Scott because you like him. Heath does not like him. So let's have a Boston Scott conversation with Miles Sanders out once again.
I like the setup for Boston Scott against a Chargers team that's allowed 7 touchdowns to running backs in their last 3 games. And we're talking about the Browns, the Ravens, the Patriots. These are teams that definitely love to run the football. And I think the Eagles are becoming one of those teams as well. In the first half last week, Boston Scott played 64% of the snaps, had 64% of the touches. I think Philly sees him as their lead running back. I see him coming through with a good game as a number 2 fantasy rusher.
I'm just terrified of the Eagles running game. 64% of the snaps. Myles Sanders did that in 5 of his 6 games to start the season. He averaged 9.5 rush attempts per game and did not have a touchdown in those games. I don't think Boston Scott's better than him, and I do think the Chargers' run defense has improved. I'd like to stay away from Scott.
All right, he's got to find the end zone. That's probably the only thing that's going to save him this week is unless we see more work in the passing game compared to what we saw in last week's matchup in the win against the Lions. Heath, I want to ask you about Ryan Tannehill on this list because we know the big story. No Derrick Henry. Dave had Jeremy McNichols as a start, but you don't think the benefit will come to Ryan Tannehill in the passing game?
I think eventually it could, but I just don't think this is probably the week for it. This Rams defense was already really good. Now it's getting even better. He's on the road. It's the team's first game without Derrick Henry. I think they'll be trying to feel things out. They're probably going to get their doors blown off. I'd like to stay away from Tannehill.
Yep, you said the Rams defense getting better. They acquired Von Miller in trade this week. Dave, let's look at your sits here. And running back on this list that's been good in terms of finding the end zone, that's been James Conner, but you don't like the situation for him taking on the 49ers.
Edmonds had more snaps from 10 yards or closer to the goal line last week than Conner. He's also playing a lot more than Conner. I think it's a sign that Chase Edmonds is healthy and that the Cardinals want to get him more involved. And that means Conner is a touchdown or bust fantasy running back. 49ers have allowed a decent amount of touchdowns to runners on the year, but I think he's going to need more than just 6 in the end zone. I think he's going to need around 30 or 40 yards just to help fantasy managers out, and I'm not sure he's going to get that kind of work. Last week he was saved because he scored twice. This week at best he scores once.
Got to find the end zone. If he scores once, he'll be happy with it, but obviously he needs to do a little bit more in terms of the yards, and we'll see if, in fact, Kyler Murray is going to play. We know he's likely going to be a game-time decision. Sits for me, the big one is obviously Adrian Peterson. When you look at the scenario, stepping in for Derrick Henry, I just don't want to trust a 36-year-old running back in his first game going against the Rams. Like Heath said, first game on the road. Von Miller's on the defense there. It's going to be a tough situation, I think, for this entire Titans offense. So Adrian Peterson, let him do something on your bench. You feel comfortable about it moving forward. But for this week, I would try to avoid Adrian Peterson like Dave had. I would probably prefer Jeremy McNichols, certainly in PPR. There's your starts and sits for week number 9. Make sure you check us out on our Fantasy Football Today podcast. You can find out where podcasts are available. And, of course, check us out, CBS Sports HQ. We are live Monday through Friday at noon Eastern, Sunday 10 a.m. Eastern. We help you dominate your fantasy leagues. For Heath, for Dave, I'm Jamie. Thanks for watching Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local.